Democrats simply don't have the cold-heartedness necessary to see people suffering and just say, let them eat cake.
Yeah, but then
they are not the types that
they voted repeatedly to do it. I mean, you just heard Democrats
and what
on
was Donald Trump doing in the meantime?
He doesn't have a vote in the legislature.
No, he's the president of the United States, the most powerful president with Republicans in my lifetime, Scott.
Ana Navarro joined Abby Phillip's CNN panel, along with Magali, Scott Jennings, James Clyburn, Brianna Lyman, and Dylan Douglas. This episode was hosted by Sarah Seitner. We're going to check out their debate about the end of the government shutdown and hear what Ana Navarro, Scott Jennings, and the rest had to say. Things definitely got heated, so let's get into it.
A welcome ending or a missed opportunity. It depends on who you ask. 7 Democrats and 1 independent joined Republican senators and just voted to end the shutdown. The deal still needs, of course, to pass the House, but it will fund the government until the end of January. It will not, however, extend health care subsidies. That will be set for a date for a vote at a later time to extend those subsidies potentially in December. Some major backlash is emerging inside the Democratic Party. Those 8 senators are defending their vote now.
This was the reality. SNAP recipients suffering, nothing happening on ACA. So from suffering and no path, we've now got robust benefits and a path.
Staying in a shutdown mode was not getting us anywhere.
If the battle plan isn't working, you change the battle plan, you try another tactic, especially if what's happening is danger to your troops.
It's like, take the win. You know, we had an election and it went well on Tuesday. You want to overplay your hand.
But there are plenty of Democrats who disagree with those sentiments. For example, J.B. Pritzker says it wasn't a deal, but an empty promise. Congressman Seth Moulton said caving now makes no sense. California Governor Gavin Newsom called it pathetic and says America deserves better. Senator Chris Murphy added submission emboldens the tyrant. And Congressman Ro Khanna says Chuck Schumer is no longer effective and needs to be replaced. And then you have Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying working people want leaders whose word means something. We have Congressman Jim Clyburn here at the table tonight. His new book comes out tomorrow. It's titled The First 8. I have a copy of it here with me. I will have you sign it later. We will get to the book in just a bit. Sure. But first, this argument between Democrats. And I guess the big question is, if you didn't get the one thing that you were holding out for, what was it all for?
Well, I think we saw some things that we have not talked about that did happen. We saw what has happened with SNAP. I think that came out of this. What is happening with WIC, Women, Infant, and Children programs. So some things did happen. Now, on this particular issue, I think that's a real problem because you say you change your tactics. What are you changing to? It's a little bit like me hearing from my Republican friends, as I've been hearing for years, that we've got this plan. What kind of health care plan you have? They've never put one on the table. So if you got a new tactic, what's the new tactic? That's what causes me some pause about this plan. Now, if you promise a vote, is the vote on a bill or is the vote on the procedure? If you're promising me a vote on the bill, that means you're going to give me the 13 votes that you've got that I can get past the 60-vote filibuster. Now, if you're doing that and you will allow a direct vote, then I may have some consideration for it, because I do believe if you get to the 51, there are 2 or 3 Republicans that see the value in these tax credits.
Of the subsidies. Would you have voted along with the 7 Democrats that voted to go ahead and reopen the government and say, okay, you know what, we're not going to worry about the health care subsidies right this second. We just want to get this open?
Absolutely not from what I've seen. They may know something I don't know. It may be that they have a promise for 13 votes to get beyond the filibuster. I have not heard that. If they had that kind of a promise, that's one thing I might take a look at. But if they don't have that as a promise, absolutely not. I would not vote for this.
Scott, I'm going to let you jump in here, but first I want to let everyone hear from the Speaker of the House, who Jake Tapper talked to about this very issue, about whether or not this was going to be a vote, guaranteed vote, before the ACA subsidies end up ending. Let me let you hear what Mike Johnson had to say.
Would you bring it up?
Well, the bill that's going to pass
to extend the subsidies, that later vote.
I can't commit to anything that hasn't even passed through the Senate yet.
Will you have a vote on the issue as your 13 Republicans, frontline Republicans, people that you're the speaker because of them?
Yes.
They're in districts that are vulnerable.
Sure.
Will you have a vote so they can vote?
The very people that you were citing in the letter believe we have to have real reform.
So you're not committing to bringing up a bill that deals with the Obamacare subsidies before they expire?
I'm not committing to it or not committing to it.
He's not committing to it or not committing to it. And this is the very thing that Democrats were afraid of, that if they capitulated, that the subsidies would not be dealt with. How do you respond to that? There are a lot of people worried about how expensive their health care is about to get.
Yeah, first of all, Congressman, congrats on your book. Honored to be with you tonight. Second, look, one thing that came out of this entire fight is that the healthcare system in this country has been, Obamacare, has been exposed as a complete and utter failure. We all know it now. Everybody admits it. The other thing that came out is that Democrats are willing to make people suffer. And you heard Democrat after Democrat today say, well, we just couldn't prolong the suffering. So they admit that their political tactics were designed to inflict suffering on the American people. We also learned about cynical politics in this. But the overall issue of health care is going to have to be dealt with because the system has failed. Everyone, I think it's bipartisan now, admits it. But I'm not sure that having Mike Johnson commit to giving billions of dollars to insurance companies for insurance that's not getting any better, it feels like it's getting worse to the American people, is going to make a difference. I could see Democrats and Republicans coming together to discuss that. Like, if we're going to spend this amount of money, should we be just giving it to insurance companies, or should we be doing something else with it that would actually have a chance of making it feel like you could get seen by a doctor and get a better health outcome? But what we're doing now, writing checks to health insurance companies, is not getting us any better outcomes at all.
Here's something I've been thinking about. Between Mike Johnson and Scott Jennings, which one do you feel tends to avoid straightforward answers more often? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious what you think. Now, when Scott Jennings appears on shows like the one Sarah Seitner hosted on CNN, I always wish the hosts would ask him a simple, direct question whenever he says the Affordable Care Act is a failure or doesn't work. And to be clear, I'm not someone who thinks the ACA is perfect either. There's definitely room for improvement, and I personally think even stronger healthcare reforms are needed. But here's the key point. Republicans have had about 15 years to propose their own plan if they believe the ACA is so terrible. If there's a better solution, why hasn't it been presented? Why haven't leaders like Mike Johnson or commentators like Scott Jennings gone on TV with a clear list of steps explaining how their plan would lower costs, expand coverage, and protect people from medical bankruptcy? That's the real question. If there's a comprehensive Republican healthcare proposal, where is it? Scott Jennings recently argued that Democrats want to prolong suffering, but Ana Navarro pushed back with a response that I think was very strong, and we'll get to that clip in a moment. Jennings often frames issues as if all responsibility lies with Democrats, but the reality is that Republicans also have to put forward solutions, especially if they're criticizing the existing system. I don't think the Democratic Party handles everything perfectly, and I'm not saying the ACA is flawless. But when it comes to offering an alternative healthcare plan, the accountability really does fall on Republicans. And I think many Americans see that.
I think what we saw also, I think what America saw, particularly people who were directly impacted and suffering, is they saw that Donald Trump does not give a damn. While people were going hungry, while federal workers were making lines that went round blocks, he was in Mar-a-Lago golfing or hosting lavish parties with seafood towers and caviar and champagne. Not at one point did he say, we have got to convene, I'm going to lead, I'm going to put Republicans and Democrats in a room around a table like he did with Palestinians and Israelis. And we're going to craft a deal. We are all Americans and we have to figure this out. No, I mean, he just completely abdicated his duty to lead. And when he wasn't hosting a Great Gatsby party, he was giving $40 billion of U.S. taxpayer money to Argentina to bail out those people. Doesn't sound very America first to me. And so I think that put a light on the kind of precedent that people voted for.
Scott, with all respect, you cannot put on the American people that Democrats were the one that were hurting people, making this plight.
Who was casting the votes against opening the government? Democrats or Republicans?
Who was
casting the votes?
Scott, who was wanting to cut SNAP benefits?
Nobody.
Who was playing up SNAP benefits after 2 courts ruled that it was unallowed?
Republicans voted to fund SNAP 15 times. Democrats voted to defund it 15
and you talk
times.
About the you talk about the Affordable Health Care Act. Okay,
it's terrible.
Landmark legislation is not perfect. We understand that Democrats, Republicans, independents, 70% of Americans, not Democrats, not just independents, 70% of Americans believe that they should increase those subsidies past the dead mark of December, the COVID era subsidy benefits. So it's a huge, huge thing that Democrats, Republicans, 70% agree with. And look, when it comes to the government shutdown, I was of the persuasion that to go for it, I didn't really get it. Democrats wanted a fight. They got a fight. Chuck Schumer, back in last year, didn't fight. He got a lot of flack for it, particularly in his home state of New York. So they wanted a fight, but they found a fight that was worth fighting with talking about the Affordable Health Care Act. People were with them. Democrats were leading in the polls. We won big on Tuesday.
That's what it was for, right? It was for the election, right?
Well, I think we should have kept going. What I don't understand, and which I would love others to help me out understand, I don't understand why we caved so soon when the American people seemed to be on our side.
Because the election ended. You just said it. It was for the election.
Listen,
the election ended.
I know a lot of Republicans. I know a lot of Democrats. They're cut from different cloths. Democrats simply don't have the cold-heartedness necessary to see people suffering and just say, let them eat cake.
Yeah, but then
they are not the types that
they voted repeatedly to do it. I mean, you just heard Democrats.
And what was Donald Trump doing in the meantime?
He doesn't have a vote in the legislature.
No, he's the president of the United States, the most powerful president with Republicans in my lifetime, Scott. He never once even told them, come back to Washington.
We just played Democrat.
You guys have been out of Washington for a month and a half.
Correct.
A month and a half.
We just played Democrat after Democrat admit that the Democratic plan to prolong the shutdown was causing, quote, suffering. That was their words, not mine. Democrats themselves realized the tactic of suffering was no longer something they could personally stomach. That was their party, not Republicans.
Only 7 Democrats voted for this.
8.
Not Democrat after Democrat. No.
He caucuses with the
There were
Democrats.
7.
Don't split hairs. He caucuses with the
And you're
Democrats.
absolutely right. You're right.
I know exactly.
Democrats did fold because Trump was wagering the American people's health, safety, and food security on politic games. And the Democrats, the one silver lining I see that we can be proud of as Democrats is we folded because we're the party of humility and humanity.
Ana Navarro made a point that I think really gets to the heart of this whole debate. Her argument was basically that Republican leadership, including people like Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, and Scott Jennings, often doesn't show much concern for how everyday Americans struggle with healthcare. When you watch these discussions, especially when Scott Jennings appears on Abby Phillip's show, it sometimes feels like the human impact of these policies gets overlooked. The issue here is pretty simple. Republicans have criticized the Affordable Care Act for years, but they still haven't presented a full replacement plan. If there was a detailed Republican proposal that lowered costs, expanded coverage, and protected people from medical bankruptcy, we would have seen it by now. That's the question I wish hosts would ask more directly. What's the alternative? Navarro also pointed out the contradiction in how federal spending is prioritized. There always seems to be funding available for international projects or military efforts, but when it comes to making healthcare more affordable for Americans, the urgency disappears. Her argument is that investing in people here at home should be a priority, and many viewers agree with that sentiment. She also noted that Democrats, for all their flaws, generally avoid taking a hardline stance that ignores public suffering. At the same time, she argued that Democrats need to be stronger in these debates. They don't need to break any rules, but they do need to communicate more firmly and stand their ground, because political discussions today are far more combative than they were in the past. So I'm curious what you think. Do you agree with Ana Navarro's perspective that the responsibility falls mostly on Republicans here? Or do you agree with Scott Jennings' view that Democrats played the bigger role in extending the shutdown? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.